Attorney General Mulilo Kabesha has issued a stern warning to current government ministers and public officials, stating that they are all potential candidates for prosecution if they fail to maintain proper documentation of their assets. Speaking in the wake of recent high-profile convictions, Kabesha emphasized that accountability under the law applies to everyone, regardless of political affiliation or current office. His remarks come at a time when Zambia's anti-corruption drive is intensifying, with law enforcement agencies being urged to investigate sitting officials without fear or favor. Kabesha's statement follows the conviction of former Foreign Affairs Minister Joseph Malanji, who was sentenced to 4 years in prison with hard labor after being found guilty on 7 counts related to the acquisition of properties and helicopters suspected to be proceeds of crime. Malanji's case has drawn national attention, not only because of his seniority in the previous administration under President Edgar Lungu, but also due to the symbolic weight it carries in Zambia's broader struggle against institutional corruption. His co-accused, former Treasury Secretary Fred Sinyamba, was also sentenced to 3 years in prison for authorizing the transfer of over $8 million to Zambia's diplomatic mission in Turkey without proper justification. The Attorney General's remarks serve as both a legal advisory and a political signal. By urging ministers to retain receipts and documentation for all property acquisitions, Kabesha is reinforcing the principle that public service must be accompanied by transparency and traceability. His assertion that no one is untouchable resonates with President Hakainde Hichilema's campaign promise to root out corruption, a pledge that helped him secure victory over Edgar Lungu in the 2021 elections. However, critics from the Patriotic Front, PF, Lungu's party, have accused Hichilema of using the anti-corruption agenda to settle political scores, raising questions about the impartiality of current prosecutions. The legal and political implications of Kabesha's statement are multifaceted. On one hand, it reflects a judiciary that is increasingly assertive in its role as a watchdog over public resources. On the other, it highlights the fragile balance between justice and political rivalry in Zambia's evolving democracy. The conviction of Malanji, one of the most prominent figures in Lungu's cabinet, marks a turning point in the enforcement of anti-corruption laws. It sends a clear message that even the most senior officials are not immune to scrutiny, and that the rule of law must prevail over partisan loyalty. Yet the broader context reveals a complex landscape. While the current administration positions itself as a reformist force, the opposition continues to challenge the legitimacy of these legal actions. The PF has repeatedly claimed that the arrests and convictions of its members are politically motivated, aimed at weakening the party ahead of future elections. This narrative, though contested, underscores the need for judicial independence and procedural fairness in all corruption-related cases. Kabesha's call for documentation also reflects a shift in prosecutorial strategy. Rather than relying solely on whistleblower testimony or investigative journalism, the emphasis is now on forensic auditing and asset tracing. This approach aligns with global best practices in anti-corruption enforcement, where paper trails and financial records often serve as the most compelling evidence in court. It also places a new burden on public officials to proactively safeguard their reputations by maintaining clear records of their financial dealings. In the coming months, the effectiveness of Zambia's anti-corruption campaign will likely hinge on the consistency and transparency of its legal processes. If investigations into current officials are conducted with the same rigor as those targeting former ministers, the government may succeed in building public trust and reinforcing the credibility of its institutions. However, any signs of selective enforcement or political bias could undermine these efforts and fuel further polarization. Ultimately, Kabesha's warning is not just a legal advisory. It is a political statement, a moral appeal, and a strategic maneuver. It challenges the culture of impunity that has long plagued Zambian governance and invites a new era of accountability. Whether this moment marks a genuine turning point or merely a rhetorical flourish will depend on the actions that follow, both in the courtroom and in the corridors of power.